and welcome to my TED Talk. Growing up, I've always been interested in politics. Both my parents have always discussed their viewpoints with me, despite them being on different sides. My dad is a Democrat, and my mom is a Republican. I am so appreciative that they have always given me important and relevant information regarding politics and have helped me understand what each party stood for. That's why, when I heard we were supposed to find a news article and do a TED Talk, of course, I immediately thought of politics. I found an opinion article by Robert Reich entitled "The Death of the Republican Party is Not a Tragedy to be Celebrated." This article assesses the oncoming of Trump into politics and what appears to be the downfall of the Republican Party. I can already go ahead and say that I must acknowledge my own bias, as I myself am very much a liberal and have extreme disdain for Donald Trump. As a Democrat, the Republican Party has not been something I've dived deep into, and finding this article I think is a great way to educate myself on their former and current beliefs. This article also interested me because I thought back to the time over the summer when my mom, who is a diehard Republican, told me that she would in fact be voting for Kamala Harris and that Trump was a threat to our democracy. I was in shock. I never thought I would hear my mom say that she was going to vote blue in her entire life. That immediately lit up a light bulb in my head that Donald Trump must be the farthest thing from an authentic Republican if even my mom didn't like him. That is what inspired me to assess this article, as I find it very interesting and relevant to the reality of today. I know that I will already have some biases to automatically agree with this article, but that is why a fair assessment of it is crucial. One of the best ways to see if information is trustworthy is through something called the CRAP analysis. As talked about in the lecture by Dr. Bengaria, the CRAP analysis can help determine if information is credible or not. Starting with the first letter, C for currency, this article is from April 19th of 2024. So it is very current to today. Everything Reich stated in his article is very much still relevant to the Trump administration now and the ostracizing of Republicans who do not support their supposed leader. Next, the R stands for relevance. This article, it obviously cannot be more relevant as it is actively happening in front of our eyes since Trump was elected. With Trump in power for another 4 years, I am more than confident that he will continue to skew the party farther and farther towards a dictatorship. As stated by Reich, the Republican Party, now it only stands for Trump and his authoritarian neo-fascism. It demands total loyalty to Trump. The Republican Party has backed Trump tenfold throughout the election, and any opposition within the party was dismissed and rejected. This information continues to be relevant as Trump has only hired a cabinet of loyalists to him, such as billionaire Elon Musk, who donated insane amounts of money to the Trump campaign. I'm sure loyalty to Trump is bound to only get more and more relevant as time goes. For the next letter, A for either authority or accuracy, looks to see if the source is reliable and correct. My article comes from The Guardian, which is considered to have a left-leaning bias. The Guardian has been around since 1812, which I think proves its legitimacy and authority in news sources. This source has over 1 million digital supporters, showing its massive following and trust of the people. As for the author himself, Robert Reich, acknowledged his authority and credibility, stating that he worked his first job in the Ford administration and later as a Secretary of Labor under Bill Clinton. Before he served in any administration, he attended undergrad at Dartmouth and law school at Yale University. To me, that is pretty credible given the standards of both Dartmouth and Yale students. Robert Reich is obviously extremely educated, knowledgeable, and experienced in the world of politics. Lastly, the P in CRAP stands for purpose. The purpose of this article is to educate and make the American people aware of the massive shift within the Republican Party. The article serves as a reminder for what once was. The Republican Party once stood for limited government, active opposition to Soviet aggression, and a balanced budget. Obviously, the dictatorship that Trump wants is the exact opposite of a limited government. And based on the way he recently ganged up on President Zelensky at their press conference, this shows that our opposition is no longer Soviet aggression, but in fact our own allies. There are likely many types of bias in this article, given The Guardian's liberal reputation. I think this article certainly uses hindsight bias, which is stated in the PowerPoint by Dr. Bengaria, as a bias that assumes past events were more predictable than they actually were. In the article, there's hindsight bias when Reich explains that Nixon's failure in the Republican Party was predictable for Trump's total annihilation of it. As stated in the article, Nixon infected the modern Republican Party with a sickness that would ultimately kill it. Donald Trump has finished the job. Clearly, there is no certain way to know if Nixon's actions were to have inspired Trump's. The assumption that Nixon would jumpstart the downfall of the Republican Party for Trump to finish it off is certainly jumping the gun. The second form of bias I can see in this is self-serving bias. As stated in the PowerPoint, self-serving bias is the belief that what is happening to us is because of somebody else, but never of our own fault. I cannot cite one specific thing in this article, as pretty much the entire article points a finger at the Republican Party and Trump and does not take into account any effect the Democratic Party may have had on the shift on the Republican one. This right here is a clear as day example of self-serving bias, with absolutely zero consideration that one's own party, such as Reich's and myself's, may also be at fault for the death of the Republican Party. I think one type of bias that could be incorporated into the article to further influence the content is anchoring bias. As stated in the PowerPoint by Dr. Bengaria, anchoring bias states that the first piece of information is the one that most influences us. This basically means that whatever information is given to us first can make us more likely to rely on the first piece of information to make a decision about something. Let's say an independent reader came across this article. I think instead of the article first giving a summary of George Stephanopoulos' interview with Chris Sununu, the article could have started out with a fiery statement about Trump's recent attack on Zelensky, or his administration now filtering the press poll. That would have likely helped the reader to immediately decide that they are in agreement of Trump's lack of true representation of the Republican Party, showing his lack of belief in free speech and attacking our allies. According to allsides.com, a website that reports the biases, and political affiliations of many news sources, show that The Guardian veers all the way to the left on the political spectrum. The Guardian even states on their website that they promise to never bow to Trump or any politician. I think the emphasis and word choice of not taking a bow to Trump explicitly shows their political bias. The Guardian knows that its audience is mainly liberal, such as people like myself. Many, if not all, the articles on the Guardian's page are providing a liberal stance on issues. They certainly play into confirmation bias, which is shown in the PowerPoints as when people tend to listen more to what they already believe. Knowing that their audience is likely left-leaning will make the Guardian more likely to push a left-leaning narrative onto its readers. I must admit that readers like myself are certainly more likely to agree with an article that I already know aligns with my beliefs than one that doesn't. Overall, I really enjoyed this article and doing this analysis to help me see not only bias in the media, but bias I might have in myself. While I stay true to my values, I now have a better idea of when and how to detect bias and credibility. I think Robert Reich did an excellent job with his opinion piece by pointing out not only facts, but also his own experience and how that shaped him into who and what he believes today. I am so inspired by his work and hope to one day make the same impact as him. This article was such an interesting read, and I'm sure there will be many more for the next 4 years to come.